Connection settles when you stop watching it. Not because you stop caring, but because care finally finds a place where it can breathe. I want you to notice how often your attention has been tense rather than tender. How often connection has felt like something you had to monitor, track, interpret, decode. A pause between messages becomes heavy. Silence becomes loud. Waiting turns into vigilance. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop being in the connection and start standing guard over it. This is where emotional safety begins to fracture. As Carl Jung said, what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. The same is true for attention driven by fear. The more you watch, the more unstable it feels. The more you check, the less grounded you become. Because monitoring is not presence. It is control disguised as care. Many women were never taught this distinction. You were taught that attentiveness proves love, that noticing everything keeps things alive, that if you relax, something might slip away. So you wait, you check, you reread, you sense shifts before they even exist. But connection does not deepen under surveillance. It settles under trust. In Jung's view, the psyche seeks balance. When attention becomes hyper-focused on the other, the self quietly disappears. And without the self, connection has no stable ground to rest on. This is the paradox no one told you. The more you lean forward emotionally, the less space there is for the bond to stand on its own. Emotional safety is not built through constant awareness of the other. It is built through steadiness within yourself. Notice how different it feels when you are not waiting. When your breath is not paused around someone else's behavior. When your nervous system is not scanning for signs. In those moments, connection either comes toward you or reveals its limits naturally, without pressure, without force. Jung believed that true relationship emerges only after individuation, after a woman is rooted in her own center. Until then, attachment often replaces connection. And attachment is loud. Connection is quiet. This is where the shift begins. Not by withdrawing, not by pretending not to care, but by returning attention to where it belongs, inside your own rhythm. When you stop watching the connection, it finally shows you what it really is. And for the first time, you are not managing it. You are meeting it. Monitoring feels active, but it is rooted in fear. Fear of loss. Fear of misalignment. Fear that if you are not alert, something important will disappear without warning. Waiting becomes a posture. Checking becomes a habit. And soon, connection feels less like a meeting and more like a test you must keep passing. But emotional safety cannot grow where anticipation replaces rest. Carl Jung observed that anxiety arises when the psyche senses a loss of inner authority. And this is exactly what happens when your emotional state depends on external signals. A message, a delay, a tone you can't quite name. Your nervous system begins to live outside of you. You might tell yourself you're just being attentive, but attentiveness without grounding becomes self-abandonment. You stop listening to your own rhythm and start syncing your inner world to someone else's tempo. This is why monitoring disrupts intimacy. Because intimacy requires relaxation. And relaxation is impossible when you are constantly on alert. True connection does not need supervision. It needs space. When you stop watching, something remarkable happens. Your body settles first. Breath deepens. Thoughts slow. The urgency dissolves. And only then does clarity arrive. Jung spoke about the danger of projection, how we place our fears onto the other when we are not anchored within ourselves. Monitoring is often projection in motion. You are not responding to what is, but to what you fear might be. So you wait for reassurance instead of feeling secure. You check for signs instead of trusting patterns. You hold tension where curiosity should live. Connection, however, settles when it is no longer being managed. This doesn't mean you stop noticing. It means you stop hovering. You allow silence to be silence. You allow pauses to breathe. You allow the other to move without you tracking every step. And in that allowance, truth emerges naturally. Because what is stable does not need to be chased. What is aligned does not need constant confirmation. Jung believed that relationships reveal themselves most clearly when we stop interfering with their unfolding. When the ego steps back, reality steps forward. And suddenly you see, if connection is real, it steadies. If it is fragile, it wavers without you having to touch it. Either way, you are no longer exhausted. This is not withdrawal. It is self-return. And from that place, emotional safety is no longer something you seek. It is something you carry. Connection doesn't disappear when you stop watching it. It either deepens or releases you. And both outcomes bring peace. There is a quiet moment that arrives when you stop checking. At first, it feels unfamiliar, almost empty, as if something essential is missing. That feeling is not loss. It is withdrawal from noise. Because monitoring kept you busy. It gave your mind a task, your emotions a target. Without it, you are left with yourself, and that can feel unsettling when you have been oriented outward for too long. But this is exactly where emotional safety begins. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And becoming yourself requires turning attention back home, not in isolation, but in sovereignty. When you stop watching the connection, you begin to notice something else. Your own impulses, your own needs, your own timing. You start responding instead of anticipating, feeling instead of interpreting, living instead of waiting. This is why many connections feel unstable, not because they lack depth, but because they are constantly interrupted by vigilance. The nervous system never lands. The heart never rests. And a connection that cannot rest cannot root. Jung understood that the unconscious communicates through tension. If you feel constantly unsettled, it is not asking you to fix the other. It is asking you to return to yourself. Monitoring creates the illusion of closeness, but it actually builds distance. Because you are no longer meeting the person as they are, you are meeting your anxiety about them. When you stop watching, you allow reality to move freely. You stop tightening the emotional space. You stop holding the bond hostage with expectation. And this is when emotional safety becomes mutual. If the connection is alive, it steps forward. If it is weak, it reveals itself without drama. No collapse, no confrontation, just truth. This shift does not make you passive. It makes you grounded. You are no longer measuring silence. You are inhabiting your life. Jung believed that wholeness emerges when we stop fragmenting our attention. And nothing fragments a woman more than constant emotional surveillance. When you stop watching the connection, you return to your body, to your breath, to your pace. And from that place, connection is no longer something you manage. It is something that meets you or doesn't. Either way, you are safe. Because safety was never in the other's response. It was always in your ability to stay with yourself. There is resistance at this stage, a subtle one. It whispers that if you stop monitoring, you will become careless. That if you stop waiting, you will miss something important. That if you stop checking, you will lose control. But control was never safety. It was compensation. What you were really trying to control was uncertainty, and uncertainty is part of every living bond. Carl Jung understood that the psyche matures when it learns to tolerate ambiguity. Not everything needs immediate clarity. Not everything needs interpretation. Some truths only appear when they are not forced into the light. When you stop watching the connection, you allow it to exist without interrogation. You no longer ask it to prove itself every moment. And paradoxically, this is when authenticity becomes possible. Because people feel when they are being monitored emotionally. They sense the pressure to reassure. They feel the silent demand to perform consistency on command. And no one relaxes under that weight. Emotional safety is reciprocal calm. It is the feeling that nothing must be defended right now. Monitoring disrupts this because it turns connection into a task, something that must be maintained rather than lived. You may notice how different conversations feel when you are not tracking subtext, when you are not scanning tone, when you are not preparing for disappointment in advance. Presence replaces anticipation. Jung spoke of the ego's need to predict as a defense against vulnerability. But intimacy is vulnerability. It cannot coexist with constant preparedness. When you stop watching, you stop bracing. And when you stop bracing, your heart softens without weakening. This is the crucial difference. You are not lowering standards. You are removing tension. And tension was never what held connection together. It was what kept you tired inside it. Now something shifts. You respond when you feel moved, not when anxiety prompts you. You speak when it's true, not when silence scares you. And the connection responds accordingly. If it is healthy, it deepens in the calm. If it is unstable, it becomes obvious without you chasing proof. Either way, you are no longer negotiating your peace. Jung believed that truth has a self-regulating nature. When you stop interfering, it arranges itself. So you don't abandon the connection. You stop hovering over it. And in that space, emotional safety finally has room to exist. At some point, you realize how much energy monitoring consumed. Not in obvious ways, but quietly. In the background of your thoughts. In the tightness of your chest. In the way rest never felt complete. When you stop watching the connection, that energy returns to you. Carl Jung believed that psychic energy flows where attention goes. For a long time, yours flowed outward, toward possibility, outcome, reaction, and the self was left undernourished. This is why emotional safety felt fragile. You were trying to build it with borrowed attention. Now, something different begins. Your days fill with your own rhythm again. Your emotions no longer wait for permission to settle. You notice how little actually needs to be managed. Connection, when real, has its own gravity. It does not require surveillance. It does not collapse in stillness. And when you stop checking, you stop interfering with that gravity. There is also grief here. Grief for how long you believed vigilance was devotion. Grief for how often you mistook tension for depth. Jung wrote that growth often begins with mourning the false structures we once relied on. Let this grief pass through you without judgment. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming whole. As you release monitoring, your standards become clearer, not harsher. You no longer need constant reassurance because you trust your perception. You no longer negotiate with inconsistency because you recognize it quickly. And this recognition is calm, not dramatic. The connection now meets a woman who is not leaning forward, who is not bracing for loss, who is present, but not suspended. This changes everything. People adjust to your steadiness. They either align with it or drift away without resistance. And this is not abandonment. It is alignment. Jung believed that when we stop chasing wholeness through others, relationships reorganize naturally. What belongs stays. What does not, loosens. When you stop watching the connection, emotional safety stops being a fragile hope. It becomes a lived state. Because safety was never about knowing what the other would do next. It was about knowing you would remain intact, regardless. And now you are. There is a subtle confidence that forms when you no longer monitor. Not loud, not performative, but steady. It shows up in how you wait without tension, how you respond without urgency, how silence no longer feels like a threat that needs interpretation. This is emotional safety maturing inside you. Carl Jung spoke of the ego's fear of letting go, how it clings to strategies long after they stop serving growth. Monitoring was once a strategy. It helped you feel prepared. It gave you the illusion of protection. But strategies meant to protect the heart eventually imprison it. When you stop watching the connection, you stop outsourcing your stability. You no longer depend on rhythm alignment every moment to feel okay. You let inconsistency reveal itself instead of chasing it down. And this changes how you are perceived. A woman who does not monitor feels grounded. Her energy is not anxious, not anticipatory. She does not pull, she holds her place. This creates a different emotional field. One where closeness is chosen, not pressured. One where effort becomes visible without being demanded. Jung believed that individuation naturally alters relational dynamics. When you shift internally, The relationship must respond or dissolve. You are no longer trying to secure connection. You are allowing it to meet you where you stand. And if it cannot, you notice without collapse. There is relief here. Not numbness, relief. You laugh more easily. You sleep more deeply. You feel your body again. Because your nervous system is no longer waiting for cues. Connection, when healthy, begins to feel lighter. Not intense, but sincere. Not dramatic, but real. And if it fades, it does so quietly, without destabilizing your center. This is the moment you realize. Monitoring was never proof of care. It was fear trying to stay ahead of pain. Now, care looks different. It looks like presence without pressure, interest without attachment, openness without self-loss. Jung would say this is the psyche reclaiming balance. And in this balance, emotional safety is no longer something you negotiate. It is something you embody. There is a quiet authority that comes when you stop checking for signs. An inner signal replaces external confirmation. You no longer ask, "Is this safe?" Every moment. You feel whether it is. This is discernment replacing vigilance. Carl Jung believed that intuition strengthens when the mind stops interfering. When you are no longer busy tracking, your perception sharpens. You sense alignment without needing evidence. You recognize distance without chasing explanation. And this changes how connection unfolds. You begin to allow people to show themselves over time, not moments. You stop reacting to fluctuations and start noticing patterns. You trust consistency, not intensity. Monitoring collapses time. It makes every pause feel final, every silence feel loaded. But connection lives in continuity, not immediacy. When you stop watching, time regains its natural role. You no longer rush emotional closeness. You let trust accumulate rather than spike. You allow bonds to settle instead of forcing clarity too soon. Jung wrote that psychological maturity reveals itself through patience. Not waiting in hope, but waiting in self-possession. This is the difference now. You are not holding your breath. You are breathing while life unfolds. If the connection grows, it does so on stable ground. If it weakens, you feel it early and gently. No shock, no collapse. This is emotional safety in motion. You are no longer protecting yourself by staying alert. You are protected because you are present with yourself. And presence is quiet. It doesn't chase. It doesn't check. It allows. Connection settles when you stop watching it, because you have finally stopped leaving yourself to monitor it. And from here, whatever remains is real. Eventually, you notice something unmistakable. Your emotional world is quieter, but richer. Not because less is happening, but because less is being forced. You are no longer filling space with expectation. You are letting meaning emerge on its own. Carl Jung believed that depth appears when consciousness steps aside long enough for truth to surface. Monitoring never allowed that. It kept the surface busy so nothing deeper could speak. Now, you listen differently. You no longer ask what a pause means. You notice how it feels in your body. Calm stays calm. Unease speaks softly but clearly. This is emotional literacy replacing anxiety. When you stop watching the connection, you also stop rehearsing outcomes. You are no longer living 3 steps ahead, preparing for disappointment before it arrives. You meet moments as they come, not as they might become. And this changes your emotional posture. You are upright, not leaning. Open, not exposed. Available, not suspended. Jung wrote that neurosis often arises from living in anticipation rather than reality. Monitoring kept you in anticipation. Now you are here. And here is enough. You notice that you don't need constant reassurance to feel steady. You don't need frequent contact to feel connected. You don't need intensity to feel depth, because depth has moved inward. Connection now becomes a meeting between 2 centers, not 2 anxieties. It grows slowly, or it doesn't grow at all. And either outcome feels clean. This is the quiet strength of emotional safety. Nothing has to be proven. Nothing has to be watched. You trust yourself to notice when something nourishes you, and when it doesn't. And that trust is the foundation everything else rests on. When you stop watching the connection, you stop trying to hold it together with attention alone. You allow it to carry its own weight. And whatever can stand without being watched belongs. There is a moment when you realize you are no longer afraid of stillness. Not the stillness between messages, not the stillness between meetings, but the stillness inside yourself. This is where everything integrates. Carl Jung described this stage as a return to the self, not the ego that reacts, but the center that observes without panic. From here, connection is no longer something you grip. It is something you allow. You no longer mistake uncertainty for danger. You understand that what is meant to stay does not require tension to survive. It requires honesty, time, and mutual presence. Monitoring once made you feel involved. Now, involvement feels different. It feels like choice. You choose when to engage. You choose when to speak. You choose when to step back, not to protect yourself, but because you trust yourself. This trust is palpable. Others feel it immediately. A woman who does not monitor is not distant. She is anchored. Her attention is warm, but not restless. Her interest is sincere, but not consuming. This changes the emotional contract. Connection is no longer something she maintains alone. It becomes a shared responsibility, or it dissolves without drama. Jung believed that maturity in love begins when we stop asking relationships to save us from uncertainty. You are no longer asking. You are present, but complete, open, but intact. And this is why emotional safety finally feels real. Not because nothing can go wrong, but because you will not disappear if it does. When you stop watching the connection, you reclaim your authority over your inner life. You stop pacing the perimeter of possibility. You live, and whatever meets you here, meets the real you. And now, we arrive at the quiet conclusion, not an ending, but a settling. Connection was never meant to be watched like something fragile. It was meant to be lived, felt in the body, trusted in time. When you stop monitoring, waiting, and checking, you do something radical. You stop treating connection as something that could vanish at any second. You stop relating from fear. Carl Jung said that where your fear is, there your task is. And your task was never to watch more closely. It was to return to yourself more fully. You have learned this now. Emotional safety does not come from knowing what the other will do. It comes from knowing who you are when they do it. You no longer need to guard the bond with constant awareness. You allow it to stand on its own legs. And if it cannot, you do not fall with it. This is the deepest shift of all. You are no longer the woman who waits for stability to arrive from outside. You are the woman who brings stability into the space simply by being present. Connection feels different now. Calmer, cleaner, more honest. And the most important truth reveals itself gently. What is real does not disappear when you stop watching it. It becomes clearer. You are no longer managing love. You are meeting it. And from this place, whatever stays, stays by choice. Whatever leaves, leaves without taking you with it. This is emotional safety, not as a strategy, not as hope, but as a state you carry within you.